This is the Professional Hypnotherapist Podcast, a production of the European Association of Professional Hypnotherapists. That's EAPH.IE.
Indeed, a very warm welcome to you. As usual now, we explore the fascinating world of hypnosis and its many applications. Our guest today is Sean Michael Andrews, a certified hypnotist, trainer, author, and keynote speaker, who represents someone who is at the pinnacle of his profession and continues to scale the heights, and in many respects is a trailblazer in his profession. With a wealth of experience and expertise, Sean has been named Hypnotist of the Year in 2013 and 2018 and is a leading authority in the field of hypnosis. He is currently conducting research in the USA and abroad and is the Supervising Instructor for the Dave Elman Hypnosis Institute, where he teaches the Nurse Anesthetist course. He is also the Director and Senior Instructor for the Atlantic Hypnosis Institute, a Master Practitioner of Neuro-Linguistic programming, and has written 2 definitive books on the subject. Sean has taught his unique style of instant hypnosis in 19 countries and is considered by many as the world's fastest hypnotist. Join us as Sean shares his insights on hypnosis and how it can be used to improve our lives from personal development to professional advancement. Get ready to be mesmerized as we delve into Sean's hypnotic mind and discover the power of hypnosis for you. All on today's podcast. Sean Michael Andrews, thank you so much for joining me today on the Professional Hypnotherapist Podcast.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Aidan. It's really good to be here.
And Sean, you're an international type of guy because you've been all over the world. You've trained in many, I think about 17 to 20 countries, if not more at this stage. Would that be correct?
That's correct. It's 19 right now.
19. Excellent. So, Sean, you're a hypnotist, you're a trainer, an author, a keynote speaker, and you seem to be in very high demand.
Well, I'm very happy to be in demand. So I hope to keep them entertained, so they continue to invite me to train.
Excellent, Sean. How important is confidence in when using hypnosis?
Oh my gosh, it's probably the most important thing. When you feel confident, it makes you a much better hypnotist. People go into hypnosis easier. They go into hypnosis deeper when you are confident. And it's interesting. You asked about how many countries that I taught in. In around the world, in the countries I've visited and taught in, 2 things stand out. First thing that stands out is the most popular induction in the world is a progressive muscle relaxation induction. And there are many reasons for that. And it's a good induction. It's not the one I ever used, but it is a good induction. And the other thing that is the same around the world is that the biggest problem that hypnotherapists have is their confidence in their ability to hypnotize. It sounds strange. You wouldn't go to a dentist who wasn't confident in his ability to put a filling in your tooth or pull a tooth, but many hypnotists are not confident in their ability to hypnotize, and this holds them back. This makes them less effective with their clients, and it certainly doesn't contribute to their job satisfaction. And so that's one of the things that I work with students the most on, is gaining confidence in their ability to hypnotize. They must be bulletproof if they're going to be a really effective hypnotherapist.
Now, you've been named Hypnotist of the Year in 2013 and 2018, and you're also the Supervising Instructor for the Dave Elman Hypnosis Institute.
Yes.
That keeps you busy, I'm sure.
Well, I'd like to be busy. I
Yeah.
like to be busy. I like to teach. In addition to the classes, I sometimes do mentorships. But uh, the Dave Elman Hypnosis Institute, that's kind of, well, I like to tell people that I destroyed the Elman's retirement because they were having a nice time and they were traveling and teaching at schools and that sort of thing on
Mhm.
aeronautics and that sort of thing. And I managed to talk Larry Elman into coming back to hypnosis back
Yeah.
in, oh my gosh, it must have been 2007 or 8.
Mhm.
And I destroyed the man's retirement. Now he's busy. I'm not as busy as he is.
And then, of course, it's his wife as well, isn't it?
Oh yes, Cheryl
Yeah.
too. She's
Cheryl.
she's
Yeah.
pushing him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, she's still so excited about hypnosis, which who could blame her? I mean, it's the
Hmm.
most interesting job in the world.
Hmm. Hypnosis is used for many different issues that people present with, clients present with. But I also
Mhm.
note that you've taught the nurse anesthetist course for the American School of Clinical Hypnosis.
Yes.
Now, how did you
Um,
get into that?
well, Captain Ron Esslinger, very
Mm.
very good
Oh yes.
hypnotist and very well known. He's probably the expert in the world on hypnosis and
Uh,
pain, and he's
mm.
a retired nurse anesthetist.
Yeah.
And I worked with Captain Esslinger for a while, teaching for him when with the nurse anesthetist, and that was very fulfilling. I learned a lot from him as far as using for hypnosis for pain management, and then I had the opportunity to teach anesthetists in South Australia a
Yeah.
couple of years after that, and that was very fulfilling. I think it makes you a more effective hypnotherapist if you actually know the medical side uh, of um, of pain management. And
Mhm.
so the hypnosis was extremely useful to the anesthetist and the nurse anesthetist, but the medical knowledge that I gained from them has been very, very helpful to me.
Mhm. I have in my research with you mentioned about Dave Elman, and apparently Elman, whilst he didn't actually take up this hypnosis seriously until he was about aged 49.
Well, what happened was when Elman was a boy, his father was very interested in hypnosis and learned mostly from books, although he did learn from some stage hypnotists. And little Dave was sort of his test subject when he would encounter people in town, and so he learned a lot from his father, and then he inherited his father's hypnosis books when his father passed away when I think Dave was about 8 or 9. And then he actually worked as a stage hypnotist in the old vaudeville shows. And this was when he was a teenager. And
Mm.
then later on, in his words, he said he gave up hypnosis because girls, their fathers would not let them date him because they didn't want their daughter dating a hypnotist because a hypnotist could probably do all
Yeah.
sorts of
Uh-huh.
horrible things with a girl.
Yeah.
So so he
Yeah.
gave up hypnosis when he was a
Yeah.
teenager.
Yeah. How would you summarize
Oh, I'm sorry.
the
I'm sorry, Aiden. I should finish. Okay, so he gave
beg
it
your pardon?
up, and then you're right. When he turned
Yeah.
49,
Yeah.
he jumped back in teaching the physicians and dentists. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
That's okay. No. Um, like he has made a major contribution to the whole world of hypnosis and hypnotherapy. In your estimation, how significant is that? Is that?
Oh my! I think that certainly he's one of the two most celebrated hypnotists of the 20th century. Um, he trained tens of thousands of physicians and dentists how to use hypnosis, And his techniques are just as effective now as they were way back when. Like his migraine treatment is amazing, simply amazing.
Mhm.
And when I teach hypnotherapists, I always teach them this technique, and it doesn't involve age regression. It's simply a process where you walk someone through uh, very light headaches on up to very severe headaches, and teach them how to take the headache away. And you can actually take away migraines. I mean, people who have suffered from migraines for years do not suffer anymore. They make them go away. I mean, and it works for regular headaches too.
Yeah.
And but this, it seems like a very revolutionary technique, but in fact, Elman was doing this one back in the late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah.
So I mean, just little he there seem to be two camps in hypnosis nowadays. There's the Ericksonian camp and there's the Elman camp.
Mm.
And I think the Elman camp might be a little bit bigger. It's certainly gaining in popularity just because the techniques are basic and they are extremely effective.
Mhm. Mhm. Excellent. I always remember uh, I did some training with Gil Boyne when Gil was in Dublin in Ireland.
Uh-huh.
And I remember he was selling lots of different products there. And I happened to get, at the time, audio tapes on, I think Elman was on the audio tapes.
Yeah.
Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Gil used to offer some audio tapes with Elman.
yeah, yeah, I remember. I think, well, I still have those. I think I've actually put them on a digital drive up in the cloud
Hmm.
somewhere. No,
Yeah,
Sean,
it's fortunate that
yeah,
in my relationship with the Elmans, I've had access to some Elman materials that just are not widely known. And
mm,
the advantage for Larry Elman, his son, was that people contact him from around the world and say, "Hey, in the attic, I found this. Are you aware of this?" And they send him the audio, and so there's more stuff coming in all the
yeah,
time.
yeah. It's sort of almost like there's a treasure chest all over little pockets all over the world.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Sean, you have this tremendous sense of humor, a tremendous sense of fun about you. That's what I get from you, and you also have this tremendous sense of curiosity.
Oh yeah.
How important is to have a sense of curiosity and fun and adventure working as a hypnotist and indeed as a hypnotherapist?
Well, you can really progress so much better. I mean, most people, it, when they're starting out, I just tell them find a good trainer. You can do research so easily on the internet now, and find a good trainer, get a good basic course, and then you'll probably come out of that class as a clone of whoever that trainer was. And
Yeah.
and the same thing happened to me. And
Mm.
and then after you've practiced for at least a few years, you begin to doubt some of the things that you were taught, some of the things that you believed were absolutely true.
Mm.
And then so for most of us, it just makes you curious. And so you try different things, or you ought to try different things. And some of the things are going to work and some of the things are not going to work. But you become a much better hypnotist when you experiment and try new things. Um, yeah, it's so I am curious. I and all right, here's another thing I do. I like to do experiments. Like once a quarter, I'll pick something and I'll try and make this my project. Like the last quarter, I was doing hypnosis for stroke recovery, and I
Mm.
worked with a woman who had had a stroke many years ago, and now just this week I'm getting the opportunity to work with someone with dementia for not for her dementia, but rather she's lost her sense of taste. And
Mm.
so we're going to experiment. We're going to see if we can bring back her sense of taste. And so these things, they all excite me when I hear about an interesting issue that someone has, that especially one that I've never worked with before. It's just so exciting to see if you can help that person, and very often we can.
Yeah, excellent. And it it opens up your mind to new possibilities.
Oh yeah. Um, it's funny. Oops, let me see. Use my microphone thing. I guess I had to cough. I guess I shouldn't broadcast it. I'm going to use my mute button anyway.
That's okay.
It was all right. What were we talking about?
We're talking about curiosity and the
Oh, yes,
importance
yes.
of curiosity.
Yeah, I think that many things that I used to believe about hypnosis, I no longer believe. And so
That's
that makes me
interesting.
curious.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even little things like, for instance, have you ever worked with the Esdale state?
Yeah, very deep hypnosis. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the catalepsy that often occurs in a person in the hypnotic coma, in the Esdale state. The arms can be made stiff and rigid. Their legs can be made stiff and rigid. And I was taught that.
Convincer tests or something.
Yeah. I was taught that, and I played with that, and I believed it was true. But the funny thing was, I noticed that in hypnosis classes, when you did the Esdale state, you almost always got this catalepsy, the stiffness of the limbs. And then I started trying the Esdale state with people who had no knowledge of hypnosis, and they almost never got the catalepsy because they didn't know what to expect. And so now, many of the things that I used to believe about the Esdale state, I no longer believe. For instance, I was taught that the Esdale state is wonderful for pain management, and certainly it is. But the other thing I was taught was, don't use it for therapy, because when they're in Esdale state, the client won't want to listen to you, won't want to take suggestions. And I believe that. I'm embarrassed to say I actually taught that. And now I don't believe that. I think the turning point was, I was teaching a class, and I said, so don't bother giving them suggestions in Esdale state because they won't take them. And one of the students said, well, how come when you told him to emerge, he emerged? Isn't that a suggestion? I said, well, you're right. That is a suggestion. And so now when I have somebody in Esdale state, I am playing with giving them suggestions and seeing how well those suggestions are taken. So yeah, it's kind of the normal progression with a hypnotherapist. You learn something, you become a clone of that teacher, and then over the course of years and working with real live people, you realize that some of the things that you were taught might not necessarily be true. And that's okay, because that's what makes hypnotherapy so exciting. There's always something new to learn.
Excellent. And what comes into my mind now, Sean, is the depth of trance or deep trance hypnosis. How important, or what's the significance of the depth of trance in terms of change work that a hypnotherapist might do?
Good question. This is sort of along the lines of things I used to believe. I used to believe that the deeper the trance, the more the suggestions will be accepted. And then a curious thing happened. Most of my business at that point was weight loss. And I had some clients that went super deep into hypnosis. And don't you love it when they go super deep? But they did not necessarily lose all the weight. However, I had some clients that I knew absolutely they were not in a deep trance, and they lost lots of weight. So in my experience, as I looked at all the clients, I came to the conclusion that the depth of trance is not the determining factor of whether or not the person achieves their goal. They could be in a very light state and still do wonderfully, or a very deep state and not do very well at all. So now there's a difference, though, if you're giving a demonstration or if you're doing a hypnosis show. Depth of trance is extremely important because those sort of snap suggestions, you know, you can't see the hypnotist, or when I give you this cue, you will realize that you smell just a very awful smell. These sorts of things, when you have depth of trance, it is a very profound reaction on the part of the hypnotized person. But in therapy, it doesn't actually work that way. In therapy, it's not really a factor, depth of trance. So yeah, it's a very interesting subject.
Mm. What would be the operative factor or the determining factor in terms of getting results? What, in your opinion?
Well, I think just like in psychology, the rapport that the hypnotist has with the client is probably the most important determining factor in the success of the client. If you have strong rapport with that client, their chances of doing very well are greatly increased. That's the most important thing. With depth of trance, I don't know that that's really a determining factor. But what I will do is, when I hypnotize somebody, generally when they go in, they're usually at a light to medium state of hypnosis, and I give them the suggestions. And then later on the session, as they go deeper, they I'll give them the same suggestion at a deeper level of trance. And so they may receive the same suggestions at several different levels of trance. And will that help? I don't know. But if depth of trance makes any difference, then it could very well help. The other thing is that at the end of every session with a first-time client, I will wait until the end of the session when they are at the deepest level of trance. That's when it happens. Then I'll give them a test to prove to them that they were hypnotized, because there's kind of a magic associated with hypnosis. People like feeling hypnotized. Everyone loves it. It's very relaxing. But if you realize that you're hypnotized, the odds of your therapy taking hold, the odds are increased. So I will seal their eyes shut. I will make their arms stiff and rigid and challenge them to bend it. And I'll stick their hand to the arm of the chair so they cannot pull their arm up. And then I'll ask them, "Did you think you're hypnotized?" And they'll go, "Well, yes, I guess I am." And I think this really helps your therapy, because if that same person came out of hypnosis and doesn't know that he or she was hypnotized, then the next thing that is likely to enter that person's mind is, so if I wasn't hypnotized, or I'm not sure if I was hypnotized, maybe that therapy didn't work. And that's not a good thing. So I think that any therapist can increase their effectiveness by proving to their client that they were hypnotized. And so depth of trance is important that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. And in November of 22, just gone by there a few months ago, you were in the UK at the UK Hypnotherapist Convention.
Yes, great
convention. And you spoke there. The title of your talk was "You're a Hypnotist. Can you show me something?" And that sort of falls in line with what we're talking about now there a moment ago.
Oh, yes, that's my favorite thing. I mean, I always say that we have the most amazing job in the world. It is, it's incredible. I mean, I've had some wonderful jobs in my long career, but nothing compares with being a hypnotherapist. And when I'm with people and they say, "Oh, can you show me some hypnosis?" Well, most hypnotists can't do that, because most hypnotists, I mentioned earlier, use a progressive muscle relaxation induction, which takes way too long. And so it's not really good for a demonstration. And then also the problem with confidence in their ability to hypnotize. So since I am very confident in my ability to hypnotize, and I can get into how I got that confident, because I'm very confident, it's very easy for me to show them something. So that's what I was, and why would you do this? Two different things. One is just to have a heck of a good time at parties and in pubs. Just you're the most, I tell our people, when you walk in there, you're the most interesting person in the room, unless there happens to be a brain surgeon astronaut, and that almost never happens. So you're the most interesting person in the room, and if you can show them what you do, they will be wowed by it. Okay, so that's fun, just from a personal standpoint. But what about from a career standpoint? Most hypnotists do not have enough clients in their office. I'd say 95% of hypnotists, if you ask them, they would say, yeah, I would like to have more clients in my office. Okay. So the way you get clients is to give talks at service groups and that sort of thing. And when you do that, when you give a talk, it's very interesting to talk about hypnosis. But if you can demonstrate hypnosis, then people are amazed. Most people have never seen hypnosis. And so if you can demonstrate, which is very easy, then you can fill your office with clients. So now, as far as how do you get the confidence to get up there and give a demonstration, or even do it in a pub or at a party, the way I got confident was just in doing induction after induction. And also, for a while there, I was doing street hypnosis. I actually have a book on street hypnosis, and I was out there hypnotizing strangers. And if you can hypnotize a stranger on the street, then someone who comes into your office to get hypnotized is just a piece of cake. So I did it through doing street hypnosis. But right now, the way I teach people is a simple process where you go from a brief 30-second to a 1-minute explanation of the common misconceptions about hypnosis, then maybe a quick 30 seconds on the history of hypnosis, and then go into a suggestibility test, which you then turn into an induction, and then you give a little demonstration. And that is, I mean, when you can do that, you're certainly going to be the most interesting person in the room. And if you can do that in front of a service group, you're going to have more clients than you know what to do with.
Excellent. And this opens up the whole area of, hypnosis for entertainment and hypnosis for therapeutic change as working as a hypnotherapist. How do you see the connectedness, if that doesn't sound too simple a question, between both of them, and in terms of that, ethical hypnosis as opposed to stage hypnosis?
Yeah. Well, I think stage hypnosis can also be ethical. Like, for instance, I only do clean shows, and I don't do many shows, but when I do, they're clean. You can bring your mom, you can bring the children. Hypnosis is an amazing thing, and you don't have to embarrass people or do a blue show in order to entertain. I even did some clean shows in Las Vegas, which means I'll probably never be invited back. But the stage skills are so good for a hypnotherapist to demonstrate when they're giving talks. Those are all stage skills that I use when I do that. Some would say that hypnosis would have gone by the wayside if it hadn't been for stage hypnotists keeping it alive. And so I think that, and here's a funny thing. I used to hate stage hypnosis and stage hypnotists. When I first learned hypnosis, I thought stage hypnosis, it makes us all look bad. It makes us look like charlatans. This is a very serious therapy for helping people with their real life issues. And I actually thought that stage hypnosis should be outlawed. That was back in probably 2005, 2006. I did. I thought, this is dangerous stuff. You shouldn't. I changed my mind. Yes. Yeah. and I can't explain why, but the things that I learned doing stage hypnosis made me a better hypnotist, made me bulletproof as a hypnotist.
Mhm.
And also those skills translated into giving great demonstrations when I give talks to get clients.
Mhm. Of course, I think it's important to emphasize as well, Sean. Okay, having fun, I suppose, is and being curious, but it's also important to mention that a client or a hypnotic subject, a person who is in hypnosis, will not
Mhm.
do something unless they fully agree with it. Am I right in saying that?
Mostly right.
Mostly.
Um, Mostly right. Yes, that's another thing that I used to believe about hypnosis. I mean,
Yeah.
the three common misconceptions about hypnosis is one, that there's a loss of control and you could be made to do something that
Yeah.
was not really good for you. The second one is that people tell secrets in hypnosis. And the third one is that people can get stuck in hypnosis. Those are the three main misconceptions. And when
Yeah.
I explain them to people, um, it makes them comfortable with hypnosis and confident and comfortable with me. And so they go into hypnosis.
Yeah.
Um, but to tell you the truth, some people probably could do something in hypnosis that they would not normally do and that they would wish they had not done. Um, that it is remotely possible.
Yeah.
And you hear about it, you'll see it in the newspapers maybe once every 2 years. It doesn't happen very often. Why? Because most of us got into this to help people, and
Yeah.
most of us are extremely ethical, and we don't
Absolutely.
want to harm people. So
No.
that's why you don't hear about it.
Yeah.
However, there are bad actors out there.
Yeah.
And like I said, you don't hear about it very often. And I'll tell you, if you did a study on people doing inappropriate things, and you compared the hypnotists that
Mm.
do that sort of thing with physicians or with lawyers or with any other profession, uh, hypnotists come out looking pretty clean. We come up pretty well because it's very rare that hypnotists, do these, go rogue. All right. So you don't hear about it very often. And
Mm.
another reason why you don't hear about it very often is that in order for a person to do something against their will, you need three things. You need a very, very, very suggestible person. And I'm talking about a one percenter, like deepest subject, right? And then you need a very good hypnotist. All right. And the third thing that you need is that hypnotist has to be unethical.
Yeah.
And most good hypnotists are ethical,
Yeah.
and most unethical hypnotists aren't very good. So you don't hear about that happening very often. However,
Yeah.
occasionally you hear,
Yeah.
and then it comes from usually a hobbyist,
Yeah. Yeah.
not a hypnotherapist. It's somebody
Yeah.
who uh, I don't know, has been watching YouTube videos and
Mm.
gone out on the dark web and
Mm.
those people. But like I say, they're not very good. They're not usually very successful, and
Mm.
that's a good thing. And
Yeah.
that's just shows how safe hypnosis is because, but okay, is it very remotely possible that someone could do something in hypnosis that they would later regret or that they don't really want to do? Theoretically possible. Very occasionally it will happen, but if it does, it's going to wind up in the papers
Yeah.
because sometimes these bad actors will try and cover up their tracks by using amnesia. They'll
Mm.
try to give the client amnesia for what has happened, but that amnesia is not going to last forever. And sooner or later, that person is going to go, oh, wait a minute. Now it's coming back to me. And then when that happens, they go to the police, and the police will go and talk to everyone who's ever met that rogue hypnotist.
Yeah.
And then they go to jail, as they
Yeah.
rightly should. So
Absolutely.
so that's kind of a long answer there,
Yeah, no,
but
that's excellent because I think it's important. I think it's important that we tease out this, that there are ethical and unethical people in every walk of life, in every walk of every
yeah.
profession. How many languages do you speak, Sean?
Just Russian and English.
Okay, I was just asking that because I know that you spent 4 years in Germany.
Oh, I speak a little German.
Yeah. And what were you doing in Germany, if I may inquire?
That was my base from which I traveled and taught.
Oh, okay.
Um, it's funny. Although I did not teach in Germany, I I promised a friend of mine that I wouldn't teach in Germany, and it was probably not the best thing to do, but
Mhm,
but I promised. So I did not teach in Germany, but I
mhm.
did teach uh, in Netherlands and Belgium and the UK, and I taught all around. But I didn't teach Switzerland, but I didn't teach in Germany. But
Okay.
so yeah, my wife was actually working in Germany, and so that was our base in Heidelberg, which is a beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful city.
Yeah.
And yeah, I traveled and taught them.
Mhm. And do you find that, hypnotic subjects are basically the same all over the world, or is there an exception to that?
Interesting question. Okay, there are different ethnic responses to hypnosis. Like, for instance, people in from the Indian subcontinent, um, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, tend to be highly hypnotizable, and also people from Persians, particularly the women, um,
Yeah.
tend to be highly hypnotizable. They tend to be very good at going into hypnosis. And I don't know, I've not seen any studies as to whether this might be genetic or it might be cultural.
Yeah.
Uh, but but there you have it. And
But
James Esdale found this out, right?
mm,
When he was working down in India, when he
yeah.
was doing his mesmerism. And then he came back to the UK and tried to teach it. And the Northern Europeans are not as highly hypnotizable or mesmerizable
Mm,
as people from the Indian subcontinent where he had been working. It's not to say that Northern Europeans aren't good at going in hypnosis. It's just that they're not as good as people from those areas of the world. Also,
yeah.
people from Asia tend to be more highly hypnotizable than Northern Europeans.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
so, so yeah, I have found a difference. It's just funny. I taught in Singapore, and
Yeah.
most Singaporeans are of Chinese heritage.
That's right.
They have some Malays and some
Yeah.
Indonesian, but primarily Chinese heritage. And I taught a course, and there were about 25 people in the class, and 24 of them were somnambulists, were deep subjects. And there was one lady there from Indonesia, and
Yeah.
she said, "So when do I get to experience this?" And I said, "You might not be able to. You're normal." All
Yeah.
these people. See, not everyone is a somnambulist. Another
No.
thing I used to be
No.
a believe about hypnosis. I
Uh-huh.
used to believe that you did the Dave Elman induction and you could get somnambulism from everybody.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, yes, the old hypnotists, um, Bernheim and Lebo and all these guys said that 20% of us are deep subjects. But I thought, well, we have modern methods. We're better now. Well, and then working with thousands of clients and people in demonstrations, those guys were right. Only
Yeah.
20% of people are deep subjects. That's just the way it is. But in Singapore, in that particular class, I
Mm.
had 24 deep subjects and one normal person.
Mm. Interesting indeed. Um, you're doing some investigations, I believe, into mesmerism at the moment.
Yeah. I see the way I've always looked at mesmerism. Well, the way I look at hypnosis, we put people into a trance, and in a trance, they are more suggestible, and we give them suggestions that are good for them. And a lot of them take these suggestions and they get better, and their life is more fulfilling. That's my
Mm.
model of hypnosis. But my model for mesmerism was always that it's suggestion, and people expect, if they are mesmerized, whether you want to do it directly with passes of the hands over them, or if in Mesmer's time you have them sit around a a big tub of water that has iron filings in it and maybe magnets and ropes and iron bars coming out of it that you hang on to and get magnetized and you get better. Okay, that was suggestion. That's my opinion on it.
Mm.
And in the reading I've done on mesmerism, they used to talk about crisis. Sometimes the clients would go into this crisis, and it wasn't greatly explained, but it was, they had a special room, Mesmer did,
Yeah.
with padding, and he could put the people in there so they wouldn't hurt themselves when they went into crisis.
Mhm.
So so that was my background in mesmerism. So I was teaching in November after the UK Hypnosis
Yeah.
Convention. I was teaching in Bregenz, Austria, and my friend and colleague Nicole Wackernagel of the Swiss Hypnosis Institute, she invited this mesmerist to come and give us a lecture at the end of our class. And I thought, well, okay, I'll be polite and I'll watch because it might be interesting. And he worked with 3 people that from the class that I knew were highly hypnotizable. So the fact that he was able to fascinate these people, I was not impressed because they were highly suggestible, and anything would work with them.
Mm-hmm.
So then one of the students who was a low hypnotizable asked if it would work with her. And he said yes. And he worked with her and it just didn't work. And I think she may have been actively resisting.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so it didn't work. And I thought, oh, that's a shame. It's the end of his lecture, and it's a shame that he had to finish with a failure. Because you never want to finish a demonstration with a failure. And so then the next couple of days we met, 4 of us and the mesmerist, so he could tell us all about what he does. And he took one of the students from my class had stayed an extra day, and the mesmerist ran into him outside the building and invited him to come in for a demonstration. And when he brought him in, I thought, oh no, this is certainly not going to work, because I knew this student and he's a low hypnotizable, and he's a kind of conservative, sort of quiet guy. And I thought, well, okay, well, do your best. And he had him sit in a chair and he began the passes on him. And he asked him, how do you feel? And the guy said, fair. I feel heavy. And he said, okay, good. Stand up. And then he stood him up and he began doing these passes over the guy's body from the top of his head all the way down to, I guess, to his hips. And he kept doing it. And then the guy began to move side to side, and the mesmerist moved his hands side to side. And I could not tell if the man was moving side to side because the mesmerist was moving side to side, or if the mesmerist was just following him, so I'm still not impressed. And then suddenly, though, his movement became more profound. And as the mesmerist moved his hand more side to side, and this fellow, his eyes are closed. He cannot see what the mesmerist is doing. And the mesmerist reached toward the guy about 6 inches away from his upper chest and made a grabbing motion and pulled toward the mesmerist, right? And this guy was drawn toward him as he did this. And the guy cannot see. He can't see what the mesmerist is doing, but the mesmerist is making this guy go forward and back and forth. And then the guy leaned all the way back, and I swear I thought he was going to fall on his head because his body just arched. And this is not a fit man. The man is definitely overweight. And he leaned all the way back, as it looked like one of those woodcuts or one of those drawings you see of the ancient mesmerists. Yeah. And he leans all the way back, and suddenly his face got so red, and he came forward and just roared. It was like some sort of a seizure, and he began jerking and moving all around, and then he began jumping up and down. And like I say, this is not a fit man, and he is really getting high off the floor. And I jumped up to make sure that he didn't fall, because I thought he's going to hurt himself. And his reaction to this, what the mesmerist was doing, was just violent. And I mean, if this guy had known something about mesmerism, which he did not, then maybe you would think, well, he's just doing what he expects. but he didn't know anything about mesmerism, and he wasn't highly hypnotizable. And his reaction was just, it was like a seizure. It's crazy. And finally, the mesmerist laid him down, and he began to continued to jerk and move around and sweat profusely, and of course from all the activity.
Yeah.
And finally, he came out of it. He opened his eyes and just said, "Whoa, what happened?" And in follow up with this gentleman, his issue, which was a very serious one, seems to have gone away. And so I talked with the mesmerist about this. I said, what is your model? And he said, well, my model is that when maybe in childhood something happens, it makes an impression on you and it stays with you. I thought, okay, that's kind of my model of hypnosis. And he said, but it stays in your physical body. And so by doing these passes, it releases this pent up energy or whatever, and you automatically get better from that. And I thought, well, that's very different from what I do in hypnotherapy. So anyway, and I saw him do this with somebody else, another like ordinary, not a highly hypnotizable person. And the reaction was quite similar, this crisis. And so these people did not know anything about mesmerism or what a crisis was. It was not talked about or demonstrated in this guy's lecture. So I don't know. I mean, something certainly happened, and I don't know. And so, yes, I came home and I ordered 6 books from the antiquarian bookstore, and I've been reading everything that I can on mesmerism. And I don't. It's not. I haven't become a believer in it, but I'm having more doubts about it. Is there something going on here? I don't know, but what I saw was crazy.
I've often worked with muscle memory, where the trauma actually resides in the muscles. I've actually done some investigations into that, and maybe that's part of touching on exactly what mesmerism is, or animal magnetism, I think it was called at some stage.
Yeah.
Now, thank you so much, Sean. If there was something, advice that you could give to new practitioners getting into, the whole world of hypnotherapy, hypnosis per se, what would that advice be?
My advice is, fresh out of your training, hypnotize lots of people. Hypnotize as many people as you can. The way you get good at hypnosis is by hypnotizing people. And there are many different ways to do it. One of the ways I did it when I was new was I started a hypnosis meetup, and I get together with other people who were hypnotists, some of them very experienced, some of them brand new, some of them just interested in hypnosis and getting hypnotized. And we would get together and I would teach a concept and we would work on one another. We hypnotize. And that's how you become bulletproof, by hypnotizing many, many people. And it's really easy because many hypnotists are in the same boat as you, and they need practice hypnotizing. And now, what with Zoom and other technologies, you can do this with people around the world. So if you go out there and say, hey, I'm looking for other hypnotists or people interested in getting hypnotized, I'm looking for, other people to play with, and you will find other people, and you can do that and get that practice in, because when you can confidently hypnotize people, then you can work on the real hard part, which is becoming a good therapist. Hypnosis should be the least of your troubles, whether you're a stage hypnotist or a hypnotherapist. The hypnotizing of people should be the least of your worries. You should feel confident in your ability to hypnotize, and the only way to do that is by hypnotizing lots and lots of people.
Excellent. Is there any final thing you want to get across to our listeners on this podcast?
No, just it's what we do is very cool. It is the most fun. I mean, I would pay people to let me do this. And it's amazing that we can be paid. We can be paid very well for doing this. But this is the most incredible thing. You can help people with their lives what is better in this world than to, none of us is making it out of here alive. So what could you do that would have any meaning in this world? How about making other people's time they spend on this earth happy and fulfilling? And with hypnotherapy, you can do that. It's if you're going through an existential crisis, maybe you ought to become a hypnotist, because you can do amazing things and help your fellow man. And I'm grateful, and I think they should be grateful that they're hypnotherapists, because it's the coolest job in the world.
So how can we contact the world's fastest hypnotist?
Well, they can find me on my website, worldsfastesthypnotist.com. And then also I do a newsletter, which is usually weekly, where I talk about advanced tips for hypnotists. And if you ask people who are on my newsletter, they'll tell you it's not salesy. It's very newsy. I talk about ways you can become a better hypnotherapist. So they can find me that way, or they could look for my book or video products. The book on street hypnosis is not it's called Street Hypnosis, but it's actually a lot of basic how to hypnotize people. So so they can find me that way.
Mm-hmm. Sean Michael Andrews,
or YouTube.
Yeah, excellent. Sean Michael Andrews, world's fastest hypnotist. Thank you so much.
Aidan, thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun.
You have been listening to the Professional Hypnotherapist Podcast, a production of the European Association of Professional Hypnotherapists. That's EAPH.IE.